Hey everyone, I'm Thomas Mahler, Creative Director at Moon Studios. Just a couple months ago, we released our Breach updates that introduced a whole lot of new content into No Rest for the Wicked. We then promised that our next update would be co-op multiplayer, and today we're going to fulfill that promise. With No Rest for the Wicked, we're building a whole new subgenre. We've combined the systemic depth of an action RPG with a Souls-like combat model, and that naturally meant that our vision for co-op was also very different from the status quo. Traditionally, multiplayer in ARPGs followed a pretty simple host and guest model. You'd play on your save file and temporarily invite a friend to join your session for a while. But once your session was done, you'd go back to your save file and your friends would go back to theirs. And so you never really became a true RPG party that shared a common challenge or journey. In recent years, ARPGs moved towards systems where you'd see completely random players getting streamed into your world. But because these people are complete strangers or bots, you still ended up feeling lonely, even though you often saw other players roaming around. What? And thus, we still felt like this never created and maintained the feeling that we think most players always desire to have when playing an RPG together with others. On the MMORPG side, community and clans have always been much more important aspects because you finally shared an entire world with others, not just a single person's save file. But when you're playing alongside thousands of people on the same server, no single interaction can ever truly feel meaningful, and so it always ended up feeling like just being in a theme park together. And then we have all the Souls-likes. Their combat models introduced never before seen depth to the genre. And in terms of multiplayer, you could summon random players to help you defeat a particularly difficult boss. But once the boss battle was over, those players immediately got kicked out of your game. Once again, you never got that feeling of actually being on a journey together. With Wicked, our goal was to combine the best aspects of ARPGs with the best aspects of MMORPGs in order to create the most immersive multiplayer experience possible. We believe that what players really want is a multiplayer experience where you form an actual fellowship with your friends and family, one that brings back the magical feeling of playing your very first D&D campaign. So, instead of everyone playing their own games, you're now all playing one game, together. So far, in any of our live builds, any realm you created was a single-player realm. Now, should you choose to invite other players, you will turn your realm into a persistent shared realm that you can enjoy with other players. Note that our persistent realms can always be accessed and do not rely on the host to be online. So even if your friends are not currently playing, you can still always hop back in for some looting and leveling into the world you're now sharing. Think of our realms being similar to how realms work in Minecraft. The only difference being you don't have to pay for a subscription. Owning an online realm is absolutely free in No Rest for the Wicked. I wanted to play with Patrick, so I simply selected him from my Steam friends list and sent him an invite. You'll be able to invite up to 3 other players to your realm for a total of 4 players per realm. As we started our journey, Patrick and I were roaming around the shallows together. Patrick took care of the first few enemies, while I took care of finding some wood for us. It's highly advisable to split up the various jobs if you're playing in a party. Patrick found the first big chest full of loot rather quickly. Loot in No Rest for the Wicked follows the first come first serve philosophy. Every piece of loot ought to be valuable, and we want to see players always thinking about members of their party and be highly encouraged to share whatever they might find. I already found a weapon before, and now I had two, but Patrick hadn't found one yet. Sharing is caring, so I decided to give Patrick the claymore I found. We listened to what players wanted and ensured that there are no restrictions whatsoever when it comes to trading. It's a completely free economy with no restrictive designs in place. Since our entire open world is lovingly handcrafted, we also applied this design ethos to enemy spawns. You will encounter more difficult, and different kinds of enemies spawning if you're playing Wicked in multiplayer. Ouch! Patrick got me with his swing there. Unlike other RPGs, no rest for the Wicked is all about precision combat. That's why friendly fire is a thing. You'll always want to play together as a team and coordinate your attacks. Our enemies are quite smart and will react to being cornered by multiple players in clever ways. Here, the enemy understood that I was trying to backstab them, and I got punished for it. When you fall in battle and another player is around, they get a chance to resurrect you. Resurrecting other players will drain your own health though, so tread lightly. Since Patrick decided to use his claymore, I decided that going for a bow-based build might make sense. Patrick played the heavy tank, so I decided to play a ranged build by playing an archer. And for the Wicked veterans, we redesigned bows for No Rest for the Wicked together. We moved these from being offhand to fully featured two-handed weapons. Firing an arrow now is as simple as pressing the attack button, and similar to our melee weapons, every single bow now comes with a completely unique moveset. Around this point, I noticed that Patrick snatched most of the loot from me. And well, I might have overreacted. After Patrick and I put aside our differences, we were ready to engage in our first boss fight together. At this point, Corey decided to join our little group. Corey wanted to bring over a character he had already started on another realm. Having someone who can heal us up might help us a great deal here. Together, we bravely stepped forward in order to slay the beast. Patrick played the tank and ripped into Warwick using his claymore. I kept peppering him with arrows from afar. Since Corey already had a heal aura spell, whenever we needed healing, we just cozied up right next to him and had him heal the entire group. Enemies and bosses in multiplayer get new AI behaviors, so even if you think you mastered our bosses before, you might be surprised once you're trying to slay a boss with your buddies. And after all that, Warwick turned into mincemeat pretty quickly. We prevailed by playing together as a team, each of us playing to their own individual strengths. After arriving in Sacrament and spending the night there, I spent a little more time playing and then logged off for tonight, while Corey and Patrick kept playing. The next morning, I decided to hop back into Wicked. The first thing you should do when you jump back into a realm is to quickly check out what kind of progress your friends made. Apparently, they already upgraded some of our vendors. We changed the way vendors work recently. Instead of selling pre-configured items, they're now selling different items every day. Another new feature we're introducing is the Compendium. This is basically like an in-game wiki. We're planning to add more features to this in the future, including an index of items and a bestiary of enemies. For now, the Compendium lets you revisit any tutorial you want, and it allows you to rewatch all story sequences from quests you might have missed.
And she prayed that the Cerim would never need to return.
And we completely overhauled the way crafting works. We're introducing the scribe table. The scribe table will allow you to research any items that have been discovered at least once in your realm. You will find the required research papers as a new loot drop all throughout Isola Sacra. Once researched, you can now craft those items at its respective crafting table as many times as you'd like. And if you'd like to research items that have not been discovered on the realm yet, you can try your luck and just research a random item. Given all this, you now won't have to pray to RNGs anymore in order to finally craft the item you've been looking for. As you can see, that means that we made every item craftable now, so folks who enjoy crafting and collecting ought to get a huge kick out of the way crafting works now. Yesterday Patrick said he hadn't found an iron pickaxe yet, so let's see if we can help him out. Now that we've researched how to craft a pickaxe, we just have to head over to an anvil. And voila, there it is. That ought to make Patrick happy. I think he's out and about, so I'll need to stash it so he can pick it up later. Early on, the Rookery is a perfect place for asynchronous trading. These community chests are open to all players, so you can just plop stuff in there and they're accessible for every player on the realm. At this point, our crew had saved enough money to buy a house. Patrick and Corey gave me some of their bounty loot and we purchased the manor for us. Owning your own house is expensive, but luckily we're now able to share houses. By interacting with the house plaque outside of your home, you can set permissions for each player, so I gave Patrick and Corey full permissions. That means that they got access to the house and everything inside it. Since we now owned this house together, we started placing some furniture, crafting tables and refineries. Even though Corey and Patrick also had access to this house now, I placed some items for myself into this chest here that I didn't want them to grab. By setting the permissions to private in the top right, I made sure that this chest and its contents belonged only to me. Patrick and Corey had to log off at this point, and I spent the rest of the day continuing some quests by myself.
I knew with the Pestilence returned.
I gathered a bunch of resources, and then I had an idea.
Hey folks, I'm Patrick from Moon's tech team. Since Thomas decided to get greedy on us, I hit up Corey again and we discussed what our best course of action was. Thomas made the mistake of promoting me to also be the realm's owner. So at first we debated kicking Thomas from our realm, but we knew Thomas was just messing around. So we decided to get him back a different way. Thomas was busy with work the whole day, so we ventured on without him. The Crucible is our roguelite area in No Rest for the Wicked, and yes, co-op is fully supported there. We managed to get quite far a few times, but never made it all the way to the bottom. Still, we got some good loot out of it. We made good progress on day 3, finishing bounties, ripping through the Black Trench, battling the Riven Twins, gathering resources, catching fish, and through all of that, we leveled nicely and bought up all the houses Thomas didn't snatch yet. There was only one thing left to do.
The next day, I was excited to hop in to sell my real estate to our group. I first wanted to grab some of my stuff. What the hell? Where's the stuff? Sad to say, my little plan to become a real estate mogul didn't quite succeed, but it was incredibly fun to share a world together. Now, we know many of you are incredibly excited to finally play No Rest for the Wicked with your friends, but some of you will also be wondering, but what has changed for single player? Short answer, a lot. So let's dive into all the new systems and improvements we've made since our last update. First off, we have massively tuned enchantments. There are all new enchantments to discover that give you even more variety to build your class. On top of that, we have changed the way enchantments roll on your items. Higher level items will now get better rolls on enchantments. And the higher your item's level is, the more enchantments will now be applied to your items. We've also added critical damage on weapons. Every weapon now has a random roll on how likely it'll deal a bunch of crit damage. So every now and then, you'll now get that satisfying crunch of dealing crit damage to enemies in order to create a real bloodbath. We're also introducing facets. Facets are unique characteristics that might roll on your weapons now. In this case here, we found two weapons of the same type, but since they came with different facets, they have different stats from one another. We also limited the amount of times you can re-roll enchantments on your items. It was a little too easy breezy to get your perfect gear on our Breach Refined update, so this should help to make really good rolls feel even more valuable. Socketing gems into your gear will now give you fixed values instead of a random roll range, so that you never get randomly unlucky anymore when you socket a gem. What you see is what you get. And we've introduced higher tier gems now. These are harder to find, but they're adding even more variety and are even more potent. We also overhauled the way exalting works. You can think of exalting as the prestige upgrade for items, the point where an item is fully built and you're pushing it beyond what's normally possible. But before you can exalt anything, the item has to be complete. Maximum upgrades applied, maximum gem slots filled, maximum enchantments added. When it meets all those conditions, you can exalt the item. So what does exalting actually do? Each time you exalt an item, one of its enchantments or gems is selected at random and its value is boosted by a whopping 50%. The same slot can be chosen more than once. So if you get lucky and your main damage enchantment gets hit 2 or 3 times, that's when items start to become really special, really build defining, and really yours. For the backstab enthusiasts amongst you, not all enemies were backstabbable before, but now they are. Do be careful though, because they won't make it easy. We are also starting to introduce more offhand items. And we're starting with quivers. We already said before that we drastically changed the way bows work. Let's see it in action. The projectiles you fire with your bow will drastically change based on which quiver you have equipped. We're introducing a whole slew of them. Whereas before, my bow only shot normal arrows, with the blasting quiver equipped, I'm now demolishing enemies using explosive arrows. And we heard that some of you were looking for even more challenge, so in the hardest difficulty, prepare to face even more enemies than ever before. And these are just a handful of the systemic changes we made to No Rest for the Wicked since our last update. There are plenty more changes that ought to make Wicked deeper and more satisfying than ever before. And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed what we showed you today. On a personal note, I'd like to end today's presentation by saying that Moon Studios has existed for 15 years now. And for 15 years, we've immersed you, challenged you, made you cry, and lifted you up. We're not here for cash grabs or monetization. We're here to bring you those experiences through story, art, and gameplay, handcrafted with heart. We do not chase trends or follow the status quo. We just keep doing what we do best, building emotions. No Rest for the Wicked together isn't like the co-op you see in other ARPGs. For the first time, you're not just a temporary guest in your friend's save file. It's a shared world. Towns you build with friends, bosses you conquer side by side. A bond forged in struggle, awe, and joy. We're doing our best to redefine the ARPG space while paying very close attention to what our community wants. Our team has never forgotten why we make games. In the end, it was always about creating memories. Now, for the first time, let's create those memories together.